So, Allison,
Mhm.
something that we ask all of our guests on our podcast is when was the first time that you felt connected to something on a spiritual or on that soul level?
That is a great question. I don't know exactly what age I was. I actually grew up in the church. I'm from Texas. I'm from the Bible Belt. So I grew up in the church, a Methodist church, and we had all the little rituals that you do at church and everything. And I always remember being like, okay, I get it that there's like something bigger, but I don't feel like it's the same inside of me as what these people are talking about. Does that make sense? Like I
Mm-hmm.
knew there was God or a higher power even from a young age, and I felt very personally connected to him, her, it, but I didn't resonate 100% with all of the stories and everything that was taught, or rules and dogmas and everything that was talked about in church. So I remember that um sitting there having my own little conversations with God that were totally separate and different from what was going on up at the altar at the front and everything, and just always having that ever since I was little. I would wake up early and have my little time with God, like journaling and sitting there with tea or hot chocolate or coffee or whatever, and knowing that I was communing with something bigger just ever since I can remember, really. Yeah.
Oh, I love that. It's really relatable to me too. I grew up Christian Catholic and I went to a Catholic school too, so we just went to church all the time. And then we went to church with the family on Sundays. And similar, I would like, there were certain things that like felt disconnected, certain things like, why is this such a chore and like so dreadful on some days? But it's really cool that when you can tap into that more energetic space of like having your own relationship with God in those moments, it's just so personal to you. Yeah, that was really relatable. Do you remember? So now going back and reflecting on it, when were you able to reconnect with God in a new way that felt more authentic?
Oh man, not until a few years ago, I feel like. I think, and I'm not there yet, honestly, but once I was able to start going down the path of accepting myself the way that I am without trying to change certain things or fit certain boxes or follow certain rules, I think is when I really felt that authentic connection. That wasn't until my mid 30s. I'm 38 now. So, yeah. And it just gets more and more potent as I get older and as I am more accepting of myself.
Mm, I love that so much.
Yeah.
I love that because I feel like our connection with God is so personal. So it makes sense that when we become our most authentic selves, that relationship, that's when it's going to just develop and flourish beyond.
Yeah, totally.
So something I'm really excited to dive into with you today is obviously human design, because that is what you are an expert in. And I am so curious about, because we have a lot of moms who listen to our podcast, and I'm so curious at the parenting aspect about human design. I know you just have a little girl, and she's only 2, but you have worked with other clients who have kids and learning human design and how they can help raise them so that they can be their authentic self as well. So,
Yep.
what have you learned, even though your little girl is only 2, what have you learned about raising her and then under the lens of human design?
So I started studying human design before I became a mom. And recently actually learned that one of the main reasons for human design coming into our world when it did, and its current like main reason for existing, is for children. So many people use it for growing their business or improving relationships or anything like that. And the top reason that it exists is for parents to use in raising their children so that their kiddos don't have to go through as much deconditioning as we have. It's just part of our evolution as a human species. And it's been here for a little over 40 years or so, almost 40 years. And I think we're just now realizing what an important tool it is for parenthood. So it's so weird because when I first got into it, I was like, oh man, I'm using it to build my business and like all this kind of stuff. And I was in a different business before I started doing human design coaching. And when I had her, I had her, and then it was a few hours. I slept for a few hours and then woke up and was nursing her and was like, oh my God, I need to look up her human design chart. Like, why didn't I think of this? She was born in September 2019. And I looked it up, and she's a reflector, which is less than
Wow.
1% of the population. And I was like, of
Whoa.
course. I'm deciding. I hadn't even started my human design business yet, but I was doing readings for friends and family a ton, and I had a hunch that that was going to be like my path, my next business. And I was like, of course, God gives me a reflector. So for those of you who don't know too much about human design, in human design, there's 5 types. I'm not going to go through all of them, but the reflector is less than 1% of the population, and all of their chakras are undefined. They're open. So very easily affected by other people's energies in like every aspect, whether that's fear, just straight up emotions, time pressure, like all of the things, creativity and desire and all of that. And I just started crying when I found out she was a reflector. And now I'm like, oh, this is a beautiful gift. It's amazing. Reflectors can be super empaths, but I'm very empathic too. And so I'm like, okay, I have the tools with which to raise her to make sure that her differences are seen as a beautiful thing by her. That's the point of human design, really. It's the science of differentiation, and it's meant to teach us that we're all so very different, and there should never be paths that are meant for everybody. Like everybody's just very, very designed very differently. And the conditioning that society puts on us is all just sort of this big fake game matrix kind of thing. And it's our jobs to start realizing that and open our eyes. So yeah, so I immediately was like, okay, I really have to learn this, because I had totally dove into my type. I'd never done any readings for reflectors, so I really dove into the reflector type and all the chakras and all of that kind of stuff. And it's really hard when babies are so young. The first, I feel like 9 months to a year, they are almost still a part of you. Like their sense of self is still mom. And so you're having to carry 2 identities inside of yourself, which is part of the really difficult part of becoming a mom, is doing that. And then knowing once that process is done and once they start to show their little personality and everything, and start realizing that they're not inside your womb still, they're not part of you, they're a separate identity. That is a whole like season of separation and stuff too. And that's sort of when this stuff starts to show up. I forget your main question. It was,
Well, no, that's so amazing that she's a reflector. I love reflectors. I actually have like quite a few friends who are some of my closest friends that are reflectors. So I'm so fascinated by them. But I would love to hear, have you noticed now how she can be a reflector, and what does that look like for her?
yeah. So when I was finishing up one of my human design classes when I had her, and like on my maternity leave, I was finishing up one of my Human Design America sessions. And so I got a professional reading from a gal for Caroline, my daughter, to like sort of look into that. And she was like, your daughter is one of the most extroverted reflectors I have ever seen. Like she loves people being around and loud things, and, like eating, we can talk about this later, but like eating while the TV's on or while music's on or whatever, which is so the opposite of me. I'm like an extreme introvert, and a lot of reflectors can be introverted, a lot more keeping to themselves and hermiting and all that kind of stuff. And she's just very not like that. And it's been weird to watch her come into her own in that way. I think part of me was sort of hoping that she'd be similar to me so that I'd have an easier time being like, hey, let's just, stay home together and all that. But anyways, I ended up putting her in daycare, which has been amazing for her. And I really, as she grows, I really see the whole little lunar being. So reflectors are lunar beings, and they really, how we sort of have themes for like our seasons or our year. I'll be like, okay, this is my 38th year. I'm going to really focus on this kind of thing. Reflectors have more so monthly themes of their life, and they really change month to month depending on the where the moon is and all that kind of stuff. And it's been neat to see that happen, because she really does have little, I mean, every kid has growth spurts, but hers are very like themed. Like this month, obviously she's like obsessed with Christmas or whatever, but like last month she was obsessed with the dinosaurs. The month before that she's obsessed with baby dolls. Like month to month, like she has weird little obsessions. And I don't think other kids are, I haven't seen other kids her age be like that. Usually they're like, pick something where it's like Elmo and I'm obsessed with Elmo, or I'm obsessed with Barbies, or whatever that is. And she changes her little themes month to month, which is pretty crazy. And she really is extroverted. Like when we were sick for a couple of weeks in November, and she did not do well just being at home with me. And she was like only sick for a day, but we had to quarantine. And it was like a crazy thing with realizing like how good it is for her to be around the auras and the energy of a lot of different people. Like she thrives on that. So that's been really cool watching that happen. I think one thing that I'll have to prepare for in the future is her changing her mind. So reflectors aren't necessarily meant to like stick with something. Like, I played the flute for most of my life, and it was like something I was intense about and obsessed with and whatever. And I might have to be okay, or I'm gonna have to be okay with her being like, oh, right now I like soccer. And like, in a couple months I'm gonna like this. And that whole thing of trying out different things and trying out different hats and hobbies and personas, and that there's not something wrong with her because of that. Do you know what I mean?
Totally. It's really cool how you can already notice these like natural becomings when she's so young, to see like what truly is her true state. And the moon thing is so cool, because I feel like her always relying on the moon to align with the natural rhythms, it will be everything for her. That's like honing in on that tool and that practice that she can always come back to no matter what season of life that she's in.
Yeah, that's something that I coach my clients on, regardless of what energy type they are, because as women, we are meant to be aware of and in touch with the cycle of the moon. And just as human beings, like it affects us, whether we know it or not. We're mostly water in our bodies, and we're very much affected by the cycles. And for her though, it's intense, because like full moons, she's like up all night. It's
Wow.
Yeah, which is coming up in a few days here. And I just have to prepare myself for that too, because like she can sense it, and it's like it's bright, it's time to party, she wants to hang out, she wants to stay up, and she also gets like really emotional around that time. It's like her little toddler PMS time. It's weird. Yeah.
Wow. That's so, I mean, not so great that you have to help her through those
Yeah.
times, but it's so cool because she is so sensitive to those things. And yeah, oh my God, I'm so excited for her when she gets older too. Because I was actually just thinking about this today about my reflector friend, and was such a gift to be. She was one of my best friends through high school, and then we went to college together. And I learned so much about myself through her because she really served as that mirror. So that can be really cool to see, like the mom-daughter dynamic of her being the mirror for you as well.
Yeah. Yeah. It's amazing. She's definitely my little guru.
Oh, I would love to hear about some of the other types. So maybe let's start with generators. And what do generators kids, how can we characterize them, and how does that show through them?
Yeah, I have a few tips for each type actually.
Oh, that'd be
So,
lovely.
remind me what type you are again?
I am a projector.
Vector. Duh. Okay. That makes sense. Okay, so I am a generator. So there's a lot of kiddos that are generators. What is wonderful for us, and especially as kiddos, is really help them to start noticing their yes and no responses. So that's their sacral response. Try playing around with giving them like 2 or 3 options. So you can be like, hey, okay, if they say that they're hungry, be like, would you like some crunchy, salty chips, or would you like some sauteed broccoli? Like give them 2 or 3 options. For generators, it's really hard for you to be like, what are you hungry for? We're like, I don't know. Like, give me like 2 things to choose from. And for kiddos, they are really, I mean, they are so brand new to this world. And so the sooner that you can start doing this before they get conditioned by the outside forces, the better, for them to just tap into their creativity and desire and being like, what feels good in your body? Like, what feels good to you? And really getting them to learn that there's no maybe, and to not make decisions from their mind, to make decisions from their gut, from that sacral center, and teach them that, like, if it's not a yes, then it's a no or a not right now. And that's okay, because so many people are going to be teaching them, even like with food stuff, you're like, well, you need to eat your broccoli because it's good for you. Well, yes, you can teach them those things as well. But in the moment, it's really good to utilize food for like, what are they really craving? And it's weird because they will end up craving the thing that is best for them, so long as you don't, I don't know, make any weird rules about it. Like, it's very not often that I crave like bad stuff, like sweets or, not sweet, but like, sugary cupcakes or something like that. And even in that moment, I know that there's a reason for it. Like, my body just really needed sugar or something like that. And the more that you can get out of your head with that decision making and really teach them to listen to their body, the better. Let them get to know what their preferences are and own it, and not make rules around it.
Yeah.
So that's cool.
That makes sense, that they wouldn't want, like, it has to come from them. It has to come from their body. So even if it is that they were craving the broccoli, but just the fact that you had said it, it didn't, like, they're distrusting their body then, if they're just relying on someone else's.
Yeah. And if neither of those are a yes, then go on to like 2 more things and just really get them to learn to like, ooh, what was like a, yeah, like a noise, a guttural noise that'll come up, and teach them that that's okay to make those noises and to like recognize those. And then for manifesting generators, really just helping them know that it's okay to change their minds. This is one thing, like, say they want to sign up for basketball or something like that. Maybe have them play at home for a little bit, for a few weeks before you go sign them up, and make sure that they really like it. MGs don't have that immediate, usually sacral response where it's like, it's a yes and it's always going to be a yes. They might like need a little bit to know if it's a yes or not, and ride that emotional wave and figure that out, and like play around with it, like stick their toe in for a little bit. And that is totally, totally okay. Manifestors really create energy when they get an urge and they follow that urge. And so helping manifestor children to like create enough space in their day to be able to like listen to their urges and talk to you about those, and you help them figure that out. If you have a child who's a manifestor and they're in just like back to back to back activities, they're going to be so exhausted. Like, they're not going to be okay. And manifestor children too, it's very weird. A lot of times I have not had many clients who are themselves manifestors and have manifestor children. Usually it's like generators or MGs having manifestor children. Manifestor children, even as really young children, are the leader of their family, like the energetic leader. And it's sort of crazy So just noting that and noting that nothing's wrong with them and that they're gonna like have spurts of a ton of energy and then need to rest is like there's nothing wrong with them.
I find, and I'm sure you could say there's a challenge with each type, but I feel like with manifestors, it's so difficult because there has to be a teaching and a parenting aspect to it when manifestors really want to be like the rulers and the leaders of it all. So how do parents really balance that of I'm in charge, I do know what's best for you, but also I want to prime you and have you make your own decisions?
Yeah, I think this works for any energy type of child that you're raising, but what I do is sit down and have an honest conversation with them, even at 1 year old or 2 years old. There's a type of parenting called rye parenting that's like respectful parenting that you do, like where when you're changing a 1 month old, you tell them that you're changing their diaper and you say, hey, just so you know, I'm going to be changing your diaper. I'm going to wipe you. It's going to be cold a little bit. Like just this sense of respect, because even though it's a baby or a child, it is a human being that you're taking care of and raising. So I think just having a conversation, and you don't even have to they don't have to understand human design or anything like that, but you could just say, hey, you are in reality a lot smarter than me, just so you know. You are like a leader of our family. You're going to teach us so much. And in this certain situation, this is what we're going to be doing at this time. It might change in the future, but this is how we're going to do this because this is what is best for our family or our timing or da 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 or whatever. Like, just be totally honest with them. Like the other night, Caroline, my daughter, my 2 year old, did not want to go to sleep. And she was already like 30 minutes past her bedtime. And she's two, like she can't speak in sentences or anything. She'll like string words together, but she understands what I'm saying. You know, when you can't technically speak another language, but you can understand what somebody's saying when they're talking to you. That's where she is. And it was like right after I was getting over being sick and I was so tired and I was like single parenting that week because my husband was out of town and I was like, I have to go to sleep. So I sat down with her and I was like, Caroline, I understand that you're not ready for bedtime. I was like, you don't have to go to sleep if you don't want to. You can lay here and read to your animals or play or do whatever. I was like, but I am feeling really tired. And if I don't sleep well, I'm not going to be able to be a good mom for you tomorrow. And I'm going to like have a hard time. So I'm going to go to sleep and I'm going to go to sleep in my bed and you're going to go to sleep in here or you can play until you're ready. And I was like, does that make sense? And she was like, yeah. Instead of being like, okay, it's night time and this is what we're doing. And if you go to sleep, I'll give you a cake in the morning. You know, sometimes when you like do bribes or whatever, or just get really upset or just do ultimatums or things that are lies or fake or whatever, I just was honest with her. And I was like, does that make sense? She was like, okay. She was like, night, mommy. It's like,
Oh,
cool. Yay.
wow. That's so cool and such great advice because something that I always loved when I was a kid, I only knew this because we have a lot of home videos and I go back and I watch them. And my mom just, no matter what age we were, just always talking to us like we're adults, always talking to us like we're grown-ups. And that created such, not just a close relationship with us, but it's that same like almost like the guru and the student mentality. It's like we're on the same plane here. And kids are so receptive just because they haven't learned the human language yet. They can understand us on that psychic level and that energetic level. So I think that is like one of the best advice ever.
Yeah. And then for projectors and reflectors, kiddos, they really get their energy from being out in the world. Y'all are not energetic, like, on your own energetic beings. So being out in the world is good for you, but you have to teach them how to flush that energy out if needed and do certain, just ecstatic dancing or breathing or meditation or whatever. Like Caroline, I teach her the breathing. And you really just have to learn practices that work for you to get that energy of people off of you. Right now, we have a whole generation of really exhausted projectors and manifestors, honestly. And we really need to teach this next generation how to correctly use their energy that they get from others and help them realize when they need rest too.
Definitely.
Naps are totally okay, and sleeping in is okay, and all of that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so key. And like as a projector, that's something that I constantly have to tell myself because I can get into my own world of just being inside, especially being an entrepreneur. And then I'm like exhausted sometimes until I go out in the world, and that's where all my ideas start to come in. But it really is that balance of like wanting to be out of the world, but also needing to know when to take care of myself.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. You just have to use your authority for that.
Exactly. I love all those things. That's so helpful for all of our moms. And you can easily pull up your human design type. I'll say this in the intro probably too, but do you usually use Jovian Archive?
Yeah, that's a perfect place to get it.
Okay, perfect. So now I kind of want to go into the primary health system. This is something we actually had a podcast with the Day Luna girls, and we talked about this, but I'm so interested to hear if you've been using this system when doing readings for parents with their kids, and if you've even tried with your little girl yet.
Yes, totally. So I was just looking at our charts too to look at these. For her, what's weird is she is similar to me in PHS, and we both have like very passive digestion. And I don't know how everybody sort of does it in certain ways. So, and I love the way the Day Luna girls talk about it. I need to go back and listen to that episode on your podcast because they are really good at explaining the whole PHS system. But that's one cool thing, is that her and I both have the same, and we have very passive digestion systems. But it's hard because my husband is very, like, he needs to eat at the same time every day, and that is what is best for him. And for Caroline and I, it's much more like intuitive and based on how we're feeling, and fasting is good for us and all of that kind of stuff. And so she'll like oftentimes like wake up in the morning and not want to eat breakfast, or at night she won't be interested in her dinner. And there's a couple things with this. First of all, I have to, especially raising a daughter, the whole deal around food is a big deal. I didn't have any, eating issues growing up, but there was so much guilt around not finishing our food and eating the right things and all that kind of stuff that made the idea of food seem like, to this day, I'm exhausted by it. Like, I don't enjoy cooking. I don't like all of this kind of stuff. And I think a lot of it stems from childhood, and my mom grew up very poor. My dad grew up pretty wealthy. And so there was this weird dichotomous relationship about like, oh, like just eat whatever you want, from my dad, but he wasn't even there during dinner times a lot. And then from my mom, she's like, you have to finish your plate because there's starving children in Africa. Like, that whole thing. And I hope that this generation, we can do a better job of teaching kiddos how to eat more intuitively. And I have to stop my husband sometimes because he'll be like, well, she needs to finish everything on her plate. And I'm like, no, if she's not hungry, she doesn't need to finish everything on her plate. She's fine. And we do right before bedtime, we do a shake with like bone broth and avocados and sweet potatoes in it. So she's getting nutrients. It's not like a problem. But the other side to this is that, and there's a whole there's all this scientific research going on with this. And I don't know if Shayna and Dana talked about this at all, but like this new generation that's being born, especially leading up to 2027, which is like that huge shift in human design, the new paradigm, is kids these days are not going to need as much food to sustain them. And I think there's a reason for that. We're like overpopulated. There's lack of good, wholesome food anyways. And so we're evolving as humans to not need as much. And so we just need to get the idea of like certain rules about food and what you should eat for breakfast and what time you should eat and like all that kind of stuff sort of needs to go out the door. And human design is meant to be an experiment. So when you do learn about your PHS, try it out. You know, I always say like try it out for like a month or so and make sure that it resonates with you. Make sure that it feels correct for you. But Caroline also gets on like weird things where she'll want, you know, paleo bars for all of last month. And this month she really wants shakes. And like, you know, she was obsessed with broccoli in October, and it's very weird. Like she'll change her little monthly obsession. So PHS is so fascinating. But yeah, it's just a matter of, I would play around with it. In all of human design, the best way that you can parent is like living your design as a human being, and then learning your kiddo's design and trying to help them play around with that and find parts that resonate, and making little daily rhythms and rituals or monthly rhythms and rituals that match up to what feels good for them. But yeah, that's not an easy thing to do, because as a mom, you stress about what they're eating, when they're eating, if they're eating enough, and all of that kind of stuff. But I think if we'll just like let go and let them lead with what they want to eat, they'll probably start eating in their, you know, living their PHS style on their own. That's sort of what this is all about, is that if we just like don't touch them and don't let them get conditioned by all the crazy rules out there, they would live according to their specific chart, just on their own.
Yeah, I imagine that would be so difficult because you do have that like fear in the back of your head, and then plus you've grown up with your own conditionings of like what it has to look like. So there's still that deconditioning component on your part. Even like in my head, I'm like, oh God, oh no, like when I have a kid, like I'm gonna be worried about that. Like, and especially, have you noticed maybe being around other moms, or maybe being around your family or your husband's family, have they noticed these eating patterns? And do you feel like it's hard to adhere to this and educate them on this way of eating versus the way that they have eaten?
Yeah, my mom is the one who takes care of Caroline most of the time, and she's really good. She's like dove into all the human design stuff. So she's really good at helping Caroline be intuitive and being intuitive on her own. Sometimes she freaks out, like we'll go to a Mexican food restaurant. We live here in Texas, and Caroline will want to eat a whole bowl of sour cream. And my mom's like, oh my God, that's like not organic and it's dairy, like all this stuff. But like, she's fine. Her body gets rid of it. And we give her some detox drops and it's fine. So family wise, it's totally been okay. But one thing I was just remembering, man, becoming a new mom when I was breastfeeding, that was like, I wish I would have listened to, like, I didn't think that all the PHS stuff was going to come in to practice until she was eating solid foods, right? And I was totally prepared for that. But the first year or two that you are breastfeeding, or they're just eating, you know, breast milk or formula or whatever, I was so stressed out about timing with feedings and like sticking to a perfect schedule, and she wasn't sticking to that schedule, that I started pumping just to make sure. And like I stressed myself so much, like out so much, that I got mastitis and my milk supply just like dwindled. And I ended up having to supplement with formula, which was like a whole mom guilt thing and whatever. It was like the hardest thing ever, instead of just trusting her to eat when she needed to and know that my body would produce the exact amount and that I didn't need to overdo it with pumping and all of that kind of stuff. It was this weird control issue thing with me and timing issue thing with me. Like, Angelica, I downloaded an app that had a timer that I would like press it when she went on the left boob and then turn it off and press it when she went on the right. It was like maddening. I definitely had postpartum anxiety, and it was just like crazy. And that made it worse. And I'm like, dude, I wish I would have just followed her lead in that and known from the get-go that she might not be like other babies who eat every 30 minutes or whatever it's supposed to be. She would be fine. And the
Yeah,
whole medical community freaks you out about this too, where they're like, oh, they're not gaining weight. She was like born 8 pounds, 7 ounces and was continuing to like gain weight and she was fine. But they freak you out with these like ways that it's supposed to be.
definitely. It's that like fear tactic to get into the societal norms and adhere to the culture that we see around us. Can you go back in? So passive eating is what you and Caroline share?
Yes.
And what is passive eating? I don't know if I familiarize myself with it.
Yeah. So there's different ways of explaining the PHS system, and this is sort of the way that I chat about it. So passive eating is much more people who have active digestion do way better digesting food and life and whatever on like a pretty good schedule where they eat at the same time every day, do things at the same time every day, very scheduled, very much like eating small meals throughout the day. People with passive digestion do a lot better with only eating when they're really hungry and being okay with just like I drink a lot of teas like throughout the day or whatever. And if I notice myself, like if I notice my blood sugar going low or that I'm hungry, I will take note of that. So there's a whole, you have to learn how to listen to your body, but like my mind works so much better when I don't wake up and immediately eat, unless I'm like really, really hungry. Usually I can go until like 10 or 11 a.m. before having a meal. And that is like my magic time. That is the time where like my crown chakra is really just filled with all this like amazing external just awesomeness. Like I feel super connected to source and very clear and awesome. And if I was like, had told myself that when I wake up, I have to immediately eat something, I wouldn't necessarily have that, you know? And also just really listening to what I need in that moment. For a long time, I would have the exact same thing every day for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, or either breakfast and lunch for sure. And it was almost like I wasn't practicing my sacral response with stuff with food. Um, I was just being like, well, I know that this is good for me, so I'll have this. And it's just fuel and whatever. But as a generator, I'm really meant to follow what lights me up, and that's going to change, you know? And so I need to realize that if, you know, sweet potatoes with some, I don't know, like nuts on it sounds yummy, then that's good that day. And I don't have to have the salad that I think is good all the time. And changing from warm to cold and or crunchy and whatever, and like really noticing what I want in that second and not just sticking to the same thing every day is good for me, just in following my desires and stuff. So yeah.
I love that. I That's one of the aspects I love about human design so much is that it's so unique to that person. And even when it has something like passive or active eating or indirect or direct, it you try it in your own body. And then that's going to be like so different than someone, even if they matched your same primary health system,
Yep.
digestion type or anything, because it's unique to you. And I love that like incubator moment too, where you get to try it out and flex your intuitive muscle and truly see what does your body want and just strengthen that communication that you have with your body.
Yep. Totally.
Okay, cool. So I just want to end this asking you more just about your personal experience with human design. And I know there's so many aspects about it, but what is one aspect that you are particularly excited to dive into as of late?
Yeah. So right now I am doing a 7-week program with some like one-on-one clients. And this is the first time I've done this, but I think it's going well so far. And so I think I'm going to continue it. But this first week that we've done has been diving into their chakras. And we also are looking at the people that they're going to be seeing and hanging out with over the next few weeks, whether that's family members or coworkers or whatever, and their human design charts, and looking at where you are open or undefined and then where other people are closed, and how y'all really interact with each other in that way. That is fascinating to me lately. I spent quite a bit of time with family over the past couple of months, and it is nuts how you get impacted by people, people that you're in close proximity with, and their centers. And so in human design, there's 9 centers in the human design chart. There's way more, but in your chart, there's 9 centers. And as far as personal growth and spiritual growth goes, like where you start in human design is your openness, because in those spots, you're going to take on all of the definition and certainty and emotions and fears and whatever of people that you're around. And so people like you probably have a very open chart as a projector. So there's a lot of work to do, a lot of growth there. But what's cool too is that you as a projector can really penetrate into other people and like sort of see what they're feeling and what they're thinking and like all of that kind of stuff, because you are so open. And that's like one of the first things that I look at in people's charts, and especially parents, is, well, first of all, is the solar plexus. The solar plexus is just crazy. The solar plexus is, in human design, it's the triangle on the very, very right, and it's facing the left. But that's more important than their energy type, is looking at your solar plexus and your kid's solar plexus. So say you have a parent that's defined or colored in solar plexus, and then a child that has an open one. If the child is emotionally reacting, they are picking up on your emotions and magnifying them, like 100%. Totally. It's like that in our household. My husband has a defined solar plexus. He has his own emotional waves. Myself and Caroline are both open. So when Cam, my husband, is like in a bad mood, we are like feeling it all. And it's a lot. So realizing how that dynamic works, and if you're open, not judging your emotions, because knowing that they come from other people, really, that you're just soaking it in from other people and magnifying it, is important. And then if you're defined, knowing that you're going to have ups and downs and that you're not bad because of it, and that's just the way that your emotions flow, is really important too. And being aware of it and talking about it and seeing what y'all can do as a couple or family or whatever to realize what's really going on, and either do have buffers or safe words where you can be like, okay, you're having your emotions. Maybe we need some space to get out of your aura for a little bit so that we can take a breather. Teach yourself or your kiddos that have open solar plexus how to flush out those emotions and know that they're not theirs, and know that they're not crazy and all of that kind of stuff. And just really look at that. That is what is fascinating me more than anything right now, is doing deep dives into people's charts with their family and their kids and all of that.
Oh, that's so cool. I love like the intricacies of really looking at each of the centers and seeing, because I feel like that's the practicality of it all, but how you can really dive in and see what you picked up from conditioning of your family and these close relationships that you've had your whole entire life.
It's absolutely fascinating and pretty crazy once you start digging into it.
I do have a sub question, because the emotional thing always bewilders me in a lot of ways. I have an open emotional center, and when I look at my astrology chart, I'm just like a highly emotional being that I can pick up on others' energies so easily. And at what point, and I think this is just my misconception of it, but at what point do I have to own these emotions because I have allowed myself to take them on and take responsibility for them? Because often when I first learned about it, I was like, ugh, get away from me. Like, you're the one to blame. Like, it's your emotional ride. Like, I'm fine over here. But at a certain part, I have to take responsibility. So how does that exactly work?
Girl, I'm in the middle of this. So I'm not an expert at this, because I am working on this hourly with my husband. I know that this is my greatest spiritual growth is being married to someone with a defined solar plexus and me being open. And so I think there's a balance in between knowing that it's not your emotions, fully accepting that other person for those emotions and not judging them, and knowing that they will flow and be gone soon. I'm not there yet that I have done that. So I think when I do that, it'll make it a lot easier of a dynamic with all that stuff. Also, the other side of that is that, you know, I'm a big believer that everything that happens, whether we interpret it as a negative feeling, a emotion we don't want to have or not, is there for some reason, for some sort of growth in our soul journey. And so whatever emotions that you're soaking up from them and magnifying might somehow be linked to and trigger you from a past person or past situation that hasn't, it's like an emotion that hasn't been fully integrated, if that makes sense. And instead of, I've a lot of times just tried the whole spiritual bypassing thing where I'm like, okay, let me get away from you and then I won't feel your emotion anymore and I'll be better. Well, it'll just keep coming back and back and back and back. It's going to just repeat itself forever. And so taking the time to integrate that. Have you ever read the book, The Presence Process by Michael Brown?
No, I haven't.
Dude. So a lot of people don't know about it. And when you do, you're like, you tell the whole world. That's an interesting book to look at as far as unintegrated emotions.
Mhm.
And when you have an open solar plexus, it's other people's emotions that come in and then trigger you from a past situation. And a lot of these things that happen are in the first 3 years of our life, things that happen that we can't put a mental note to. We don't know what they're triggering because it happened so early on before that part of our brain was online. But it produces an extreme response in our body. And being able to feel those and accept them and integrate them is a part of not attracting them anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that resonates so deeply. I thought you were going to say the book Getting the Love You Want by Harville Hendrix, because I'm reading
Good
that
one
right
too.
now. And they talk about, oh, I'm on the part where they talk about the wounds and how you recreate those relationships so that you can heal, which is the same concept, I feel. Like you are in these certain relationships, so you can learn these emotions that you haven't digested yet, that you probably developed when you were a child. You don't know why you're crying at, Thanksgiving dinner for no big deal reason, or why, and you can also see your evolution with things like talking back about like the Catholic guilt and like that you can carry that on in that emotion. But once you process that, and now like if my grandma says something to me, like I'll laugh, like it's funny. But before, like it used to weigh on me, it used to be so heavy. But now that I've like distinguished between what that emotion is and that it's not mine, it's like becomes more of like the laugh.
Yeah, totally.
Mm. Well, thank you so much for this conversation. I loved all of it. I love diving into human design. I'm just, exploring. I'm no expert here, but it's just a fascinating conversation, and I love all the points that you touched upon. And this program sounds unbelievable. I am curious if you have anything else coming up and how our audience can get in touch with you.
Totally. I am on Instagram. I will tell you I'm not on there like all day every day, but I do answer my DMs like 2 or 3 times a week. So being a busy mom, it's like I can only live on the Instagram platform so much before I'm like, okay, I need to be in real life. So, but I'm at You Do Woo on there, also youdowoo.com. And I have a lot. I can send you the link for a little freebie that goes through. I have a free masterclass for each type, and it ends up guiding you into the parenting masterclass and the masterclass for your authorities and profile and all of that kind of stuff. So all of that is free, and I can send you the link for that freebie as well.
Oh, so amazing. Thank you so much. Yeah, we'll have the link of all of that in the show notes.
Yay. I had so much fun talking with you today. Thank you so much for having me on the show.
Oh my gosh, absolutely. I hope you have a beautiful rest of your day, everyone. Talk to you soon.
Bye.